This is the Doc Talk Podcast presented by Betfred Sports 2022, episode 30. Dr. Rob, I am absolutely amazed how many people's biological clocks are set to this podcast, because we're recording on a Monday night and people were freaking out that the pod wasn't there on Sunday night so they could listen to it on Monday morning.
My cousin, my oft-mentioned cousin Matt in Ohio, I get a text this afternoon. He's like, where's my goddamn podcast at?
And people were tweeting at you. They were tweeting at me like, are you guys okay? Or is everybody okay? We're like, yes. I thought for sure we said it last week that you were going to be gone on Sunday because of a wrestling tournament.
I thought we did. Maybe we did. I never listened to our own podcast.
Well, why would we? When we recorded, we had to listen to it one other time.
I've had people ask me, they're like, wait, you don't listen to yourself? I'm like, no, I don't listen to myself.
Why would we listen to this again? We went through it once. I don't know if I want to listen to it again.
I mean, shit, I'm full of great advice that I don't listen to.
Well,
I don't listen to myself.
Well, the title of this podcast, and it's not being disrespectful, is Rob Zatechka is a bum. That's the name.
That was an awesome
episode
thread.
30 is Rob Zatechka is a bum. And it started because of this, becoming very, very popular. By the way, the Todd and Tyler Radio Empire even mentioned your report card today. Owen listens to the Todd and Tyler Radio Empire. Of course, I used to be on the Todd and Tyler Radio Empire.
Well, I had a short-lived stint.
You had a short-lived stint?
For both sports and, I did like a Husker wrap.
Yeah.
It wasn't really sports. It was a quick Husker wrap.
That was when you and I first really met each other. We played kickball. Remember we played kickball at the old...
Chili Green.
Yes. And you were still with the Giants at that time. But my son Owen listens to Todd and Tyler, and Mike today said you're the only opinion that matters when it comes to Husker football. So he sees your report card. He goes,
I think he knows that I'd like to. Both Todd and Tyler, neither one of them are from here.
No,
and I'm one of those people where I don't expect somebody who. If you come from, let's take Mike for instance. He's a Pennsylvania guy.
Penn State dude. Loves Penn State.
Big Penn State fan. Yeah. Loves his Penn State, loves his Steelers.
Todd's from North or South Dakota, but he loves Arizona State because he went there but flunked out.
But, it's, at least you can say he went there. No, but it's one of these things where I don't expect you to move here and, ditch the team that you grew up following. So, they get a lot of flack for not being Husker homers. And I'm like, neither one of them's from here. It's not their team.
Yeah, and it's been that way for, God, I think they've been in the air 30 years now.
Yeah.
They're getting old. They're in their 60s.
Well, and I don't expect you to be a Husker fan.
Thank you. Though I get accused of it by Iowa fans all the time. I actually did it. I was doing my
That's what happens when you're an Iowa State fan. You get accused of being everything.
Stop it. But it's interesting because the reason the title of this podcast is called Rob Zatechka is a bum, because you did your report card after the Rutgers game. Here's how the report card works. Rob texts me the grades. I then get on the computer and do the graphics work, which is shitty because I'm not very good at it. And on Saturday night, I happened to do it from Barnado out in Village Point in Omaha. I was there seeing a concert. And you text them like, well, I've got Canva on my phone. What I've realized, I have really fat fingers, and trying to move stuff around on the phone, not an easy thing to do. So I did the grades, but I forgot to change. It still said Indiana games. I went back later on and put Rutgers and stuff like that. But Bryce Peskel, Peschel, Bryce. Bryce.
Damn, you're calling Bryce out.
Well, because it's right there on Twitter. It's not like I'm calling him out. It's right there on Twitter. He says this. Defense at a C+ shows you only observe the final score. Find another program to slander, bum. So Rob Zatechka is a bum.
I was like, damn, Bryce takes this shit seriously.
He really does. Bum. I think we need Ray Gun to make us a shirt that just says bum on it.
Well, that's the Pastor Ben, one of our other followers on Twitter. He suggested that.
Bum.
Yeah, if you follow the thread down, Ben's got a thread down there or somewhere in the thread where he says that should be your next T-shirt. Hashtag bum.
I think we could make that happen, Yeah. Hey, Rob, I just want you to know I'm a winner today. I was in Ashland. I was at Iron Horse Golf Course, and I placed second place in the Schemmer Tournament of Champions, and
So
I got
you
a trophy.
lost.
Yeah.
You're not a winner.
But I got a trophy. Everybody gets a trophy, right?
Great, Bobby Brady. You got your trophy finally.
We shot a 59. That's pretty good.
Actually, that's really good. So it was a scramble.
It was a scramble. We were on a roll.
Did they play any of your shots?
I was wicked on the greens. I was putting really well today. Had a couple good approach shots, but I was the old guy of the bunch, so my tee shots don't go as far as everybody else.
I'm looking at your trophy. It looks like a microphone.
It looks like it does, doesn't it?
Yeah, it looks like an old school microphone.
If we ever get the decoration of the studio going, we can have some stuff behind us and have. And I think Owen's he's ordering a neon. We're gonna have a neon sign down here.
And now you've got a major award.
Yeah, yes, I've
for
got.
Chile. Must be Italian.
It's a cross between a microphone, a golf ball, and it looks like the World Cup trophy.
Yeah, it kind of does.
A couple months ago, Darwin, is that his name? Darwin? Hold on, I probably screwed this up. Yeah, it is. No, Darren. Darren Swanson. Sorry, Darren. Darren Swanson, who's down, I believe, in Memphis. And I've been holding on to this. Sent us some rubs and some barbecue sauce from Memphis. Yeah. So
I was looking at the barbecue sauce. It looks good.
Yeah. So he sent us one of each. So you get one and I get one.
Nice.
And,
Charlie Vergas.
Yeah. I guess it's a real popular restaurant down there.
I have not. My brother lives in a suburb of Memphis. I haven't spent much time in Memphis.
You're not missing much, by the way. Beale Street's pretty cool.
Yeah, and everybody says the barbecue there is awesome.
It's all right. I mean, Kansas City's has good barbecue.
And then I think they kill people in Memphis.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, but New Orleans too. New Orleans is like the murder capital of the world now. My daughter lives there.
Is it really?
And Anjanette's leaving for there tomorrow. They're taking a girls' trip down there.
God, New Orleans cool.
Yeah, because it has good food. You can look past all the murders because it has really good food.
Memphis has barbecue, and then that's kind of it. New Orleans has
everything.
They got everything, and the seafood in New Orleans is amazing.
So while I was in Ashland today, I was golfing and I look across the road and I see this is like brand new Ashland wine and spirits store. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go in there and I'm going to grab some beer before I go home. And Rob and I can drink that tonight.
Got some Keg Creek.
Which is out of Glenwood, Iowa. We got the apricot one. Are you an apricot beer guy or not? I didn't know if you'd like it or not. You can say no. They're not sponsored.
In general, if you had asked me if I was going to pick up the Moon Gold apricot from Keg Creek Brewing, I would say no.
Okay.
I'm not a big fruity beer guy.
You like sours, though.
I like fruited sours, but that's kind of a different animal. Yeah. I mean, it's one of those... Those things usually pack a punch, either taste-wise or alcohol content. Not always, but at least taste-wise, sours pack a punch. They're not this is a smooth and easy drinking beer. You got to like sours.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that.
To drink sours. About the only kind of like non-sour fruited beer I really like is Abita's Blueberry.
Ooh,
that's a good beer.
And I tell you what, Abita Blueberry. That, by the way, if you're wondering where Abita's from, it's out of New Orleans. If you drink it straight out of the tap and not out of the bottles down there, it's even better. And I don't know what it is. I got
this weird image in my head when you say drink it straight out of the tap of you lying like on your back on a bar under the tap, just pouring it in.
Oh no! And you know what else is really good down there out of the tap? Not out of the bottles or the cans, is Abita Strawberry. It's better than what people think it is.
I'd be hard pressed to try. This actually isn't bad. It's not. I actually don't taste a lot of the apricot. Maybe I got COVID.
Well, you might, because I actually taste quite a bit of it. But
maybe it's just a different can.
I love the packaging and the marketing, because it says Ashland Wine and Spirits. I mean, why do we got to put wine and spirits on it when it's just a liquor store, right? Whatever happened to just calling something an old-fashioned liquor store? Does that have a negative connotation for it?
Maybe a little bit.
Doesn't need to have a negative connotation, because you know what people do when they go to the wine and spirits or liquor store?
Get liquor.
They get liquor. I was behind a woman.
Is beer technically liquor?
I'm not here to judge. But I was behind a woman at the Ashland Wine and Spirit store. She walked in, got a 40 of Coors Light, and 3 shooters of Tito's vodka. I'm like, okay.
Somebody's having a good night.
That fits the stereotype.
Somebody's going to have a good night.
Well, yeah.
Well, it could have been a bottle of Colt 45.
Ooh, yeah, that's...
or how about Schlitz malt liquor?
Yeah.
That's slumming it pretty hard when you're doing that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're 100% correct. Nebraska got the win over Rutgers. And you know what? Say what you want.
My grades got panned. You know what? Actually, my grades didn't get panned. My grade for the defense got panned.
It did.
That was what people were like, what? A little upset about.
First of all, I'm going to pay a compliment here, but I'm also going to put a caveat on it, okay? Never, ever apologize for a win, ever. You get a win.
No, I love a win.
But Husker fans can't come back at me for 2015 Iowa and even last year Iowa and the shitty schedule that Iowa played. You never get to play the schedule card ever again, ever. But you shouldn't have. I mean, the only thing you can do is play the games that are in front of you. You don't get to pick. Really, the Big Ten picks this schedule.
There's a lot of, if we as Husker fans thought we had some bad runs under Callahan, under Mike Riley, the brutal loss. I actually really liked Bo, but I mean, some of those insane big game losses where shit just got out of hand. This is kind of a weird whole new level of, wow, this is not a good football team kind of badness that we've experienced under Frost. So, I mean, I think Husker fans, I hope people are kind of learning that when they see other teams that are fans of mediocre to bad football, where it's, let me rephrase it, fans of teams that are playing mediocre or bad football, all of a sudden I think we're understanding what it's like. Like all of a sudden you get any win and it's like, oh, this is what it's like to get any win and be sitting there going, thank God we won a game.
Exactly right.
Yeah, so.
But I remember a couple years ago, Nebraska fans were always giving me a hard time, saying, "Oh, Jesus, you could go undefeated too if you had Iowa schedule." And I get it. It was a piece of crap schedule. I'll be the first one to tell you that. But you don't have to apologize for winning it because you're doing what you're supposed to do.
No, that was their undefeated season.
Well,
right?
no, it was their 12-0 season. They lost their last two games of the year.
It was their 12-0.
But even last year, as they won 10 games a year ago, it was a crap schedule. It was not a great schedule. But you shouldn't have to apologize for winning the games that are put in front of you.
Yeah.
And Nebraska fans never going to come back at me ever again.
There's a lot of teams out there. I mean, you look at some of these SEC teams, and it's one of these. A lot of very quote unquote very good SEC teams will have like two really good games, and that's it. And then it's like Kent State. I'm just saying,
yeah.
And they gave Georgia fits. So it's, you got to take a lot of this with a little bit of perspective here in terms of when you're looking around. I mean, Notre Dame always kind of gets panned for not joining a damn conference. On the flip side, year in and year out, because they don't join a conference, their schedule, I think, does tend to be tougher. All of their games tend to be kind of really interesting games. Now,
how the West is going to be won, and Nebraska still has a good shot at winning the West. I'll be the first one to say, based on what Nebraska has left, I'm not saying they're going to.
I mean, I'm not saying they got a good chance to win the West. I think the West is bad. I mean, I kind of want to see how Nebraska does against Purdue here, because I think this is going to be far more of a measuring stick than Rutgers or Indiana were.
It was interesting because I saw this, and I know Twitter is just a very small sampling, but I saw somebody today, and I was like, oh my God, let's not start this. But somebody on Twitter said, I cannot believe Vegas is disrespecting Nebraska by having them be an 11-point underdog at Purdue. And with all seriousness says,
wow,
can you believe they're disrespecting Nebraska like that? I'm like, well, hold on. First of all, you've got to earn respect back. It's just not given to you based on history.
I missed this. Was this on any thread that we were on?
No, I just saw it. They didn't tag us, But I follow a lot of different people on Twitter, and I follow because of Betfred Sports. And by the way, Betfred Sports presents the Doc Talk podcast, and you can download the great Betfred Sports app today on the Google and Apple Play stores. And when you enter the promo code Doc Talk when you're in Iowa, Arizona, or Colorado, you get a $20 free bet. That's Betfred Sports. Again, download the app today on the Apple and Google Play stores. But I follow a lot of gambling sites and stuff like that, and people just pop up in my feed because somebody I know may like one of their tweets, and that was one of them. Like, you need to back up a little bit, son.
And that's and that's part of the thing. I mean, I don't know if you want to go back to the grades.
We can do that.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people are looking at Nebraska's defense right now and going, okay, well, we just pitched a couple of. Again, this is like calling Iowa 2015 an undefeated season. We pitched a couple of second half shutouts where, I mean, they essentially shut out Indiana and Rutgers in the second half of those games. And everybody's like, oh my God, our defense is back. Black shirts, baby, we're loaded. And I gave them a C+, and all of a sudden everybody's like, what the hell game were you watching? Well, one, I'd like to think, I don't know, I'm not trying to sound overly arrogant here, and I worry about that, but I'd like to think I have maybe an ever so slightly more discerning eye in terms of some of the stuff I'm looking at, as opposed to the fans who do just look at the final score and go, or look at a stat line and go, oh, we shut them out in the second half, and these turnovers and whatnot, and we stopped them and held them for just a field goal on that one drive where we gave up the big play. Anyway, there's a lot of reasons I gave Nebraska a C+ on defense. I mean, they gave up some big plays in the first half. There was poor tackling in the first half of that game. I felt like Nebraska was helped hugely by penalties. I mean, Rutgers, nobody's mentioned this, but Rutgers gave Nebraska 100 yards in penalties.
And one of those penalties was, you can see it on the diagnosis on Tuesday on our YouTube channel, which was a holding, which was on what could have been a scoring drive for Rutgers, but that holding call was huge by bringing the screen. Yeah.
It did. So, I mean, you give up 100 yards in penalties. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that has haunted Nebraska for years, is we'd have games where we'd give up 80, 100, 120 yards and penalties to an opponent. That kind of stuff costs you games. I mean, this was a 1-point win, and you gave up 100 yards in penalties. Rutgers doesn't have half those penalty yards. Rutgers has maybe only 2/3. Let's say we'll give you back just even a third or 2/3 of those yards, and Rutgers wins that game. So don't think these are little things. I mean, if we win that, if Rutgers wins that game, nobody's bitching about my C+ grade for Nebraska's defense.
No, they're probably going to say you're being too generous at that point.
And the C+ grade for Nebraska's defense, it's not like Nebraska's defense was responsible for those penalties. Rutgers was. It was penalties all on Rutgers. So that's one of those things that I'm sitting here going like, okay, they did not. It was a solid performance against a very bad team that spotted you 100 yards in penalties. That made some horrible changes, in my opinion, at quarterback. So you had Simon and you had Noah Vedral, and I thought Vedral played well when he was in the first half. I thought he gave him a little bit more of a run dimension from that quarterback spot, and I think that hurt Rutgers in the second half of the game. There's been a lot of talk about Vedral's injured hand or injured thumb. He had it wrapped for a good chunk of the game, and how that affected him or might affect him from a passing standpoint. I understand that, but still, I thought the fact that you pulled Vedral hurt them, just in the fact that now Simon's not going to run on you. And I thought he also telegraphed his plays. Again, we're going to see that on one of the doc's diagnosis as well, too, that he's a guy that he will tell you exactly where he's throwing the ball, and he had 3 second-half interceptions. I mean, again, I appreciate Nebraska's defense in the sense that they got 3 second-half interceptions, but you had a quarterback who was telling you with his eyes exactly where he was going to put that ball. Now, you want your defense to take advantage of that, and Nebraska's defense did. That's a good thing. I'm not trying to denigrate that. But I think there was several spots throughout this game, several areas of the game where Rutgers spotted Nebraska points. The penalties, the quarterback play in general, the decision-making in terms of who to play at quarterback by Rutgers coaching staff really, really hurt those guys a lot. And that's why I gave them a C+. Now, you do have to look at who Nebraska's playing in terms of giving out these grades. If Nebraska's defense pitches a shutout and holds an opponent to minus 50 yards, but that opponent's a high school football team that they're playing in an exhibition game, it's not like you're going to give the defense an A+.
And that's essentially what Rutgers was.
It is. Well, I don't know if they're that bad, but it's, if Nebraska goes out, I thought Indiana and Rutgers are, and honestly, Northwestern, those are 3 of the worst teams in the Big Ten Conference right now. And I mean, Nebraska can easily claim we're not the worst team in the Big Ten, but those are 2, Indiana and Rutgers are 2 of the worst teams in the Big Ten. Pitching a second half shutout against them, playing a great defensive game against them, I'm not going to hand out a fucking medal for that. Sorry, Dave, but that's just not going to happen. Or a trophy. Got that's trophy
you can't
right
go
here.
wrong. Come on, trophies?
Yeah.
Yeah, trophies. It's second place.
It was.
She ain't first, you're last.
And an Iron Horse, it's a good golf course.
Yeah,
it's not bad. That's
I got
not
second
bad.
place.
Yeah, actually, that's probably better than, I don't know.
I haven't won a trophy since I was like 18, though. I was kind of excited.
Good for you. I'm proud of you, buddy. You go, girl.
By the way, if you're listening to this on the audio podcast, you can see the trophy by subscribing to our YouTube channel and watch this podcast on YouTube. Which, by the way, a lot of people have been watching the podcast.
It looks like a giant mic. It looks like a microphone. You're right. It looks like a microphone in the World Cup trophy had sex.
That's right.
But anyway, that's why I give them a C+. I mean, if Nebraska does what they did against Indiana and Rutgers defensively against Purdue, does the exact same thing, I'm giving them a B. It's a different opponent. It's a better opponent. If they do that against Illinois, I'm giving them a B. If they do it against
Minnesota? I mean, Minnesota's got a decent offense if Ibrahim's playing.
If Ibrahim's playing and they do it against Minnesota, I'm giving them an A-.
The weird thing about Minnesota right now is that they have like the best defense in the country.
Yeah, that's what's crazy.
That is so crazy.
I hadn't. You don't think of that when you think of Minnesota.
Well, 3 of the top defenses in the country are in the Big Ten West. You have Minnesota, Illinois, and Iowa.
Yeah, and you got one of them being wasted on the worst offense in the country.
It's atrocious. It really is atrocious. Going back to Rutgers, though, Greg Schiano fired his offensive coordinator. Said, screw it, we cannot keep going like this. What do you think of it? Because Kirk Ferentz was asked the same thing after Iowa's atrocious offensive, and he was offended that somebody would ask him if he'd fire his kid or not. I guess my question is...
Well, in Indiana, didn't they fire their O-line coach?
Yes.
And he was also the run game coordinator.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, firing coaches mid-season, it's a thing.
What do you think of that? Because Nebraska started it. This year anyway.
Well, I've seen it happen before. It's not like that's never happened, but that's tough. I mean, some of it's play, some of it's coaching, some of it's recruiting. Yeah. I don't know. That's a tough thing to have to deal with as a team. I mean, doing it in the off season's tough enough, but making those kind of changes in season, I'm almost kind of surprised you don't see more of a reassignment of responsibilities. I mean, I would have loved to have seen Nebraska Like tell Tim, back when Pelini was the coach, tell Tim Beck, hey, by the way, you're just going to be the running backs coach now, and we're going to let somebody else call plays who knows what they're doing. And I have seen that where you see coaches that kind of get sort of reassigned from a task standpoint. And I'm kind of surprised you don't see that as much as opposed to just anymore you see guys just get fired.
Now, you were pretty brutal, as you should be, on the offensive line, which scored a D. I don't want to talk about the offensive line.
God, the tackles just got brutalized again.
And you gave the running game a D-, which and that I think has a lot to do with the offensive line. But let's talk about Anthony Grant, right? Because here's a guy, despite a really bad.
And that's the thing too, is I give him a D and people are like, well, Grant, it's not Grant's fault. How come you gave him a D? It's like, I'm not grading Grant. I'm grading the overall
running game.
Yeah, the overall performance of the run game. I still think Anthony Grant's an outstanding running back.
Well, let's use this time to talk about an individual effort, and that would be Anthony Grant, who right now stands 8th in the country in rushing at 647 yards. I mean,
when was the last time Nebraska had a running back top 10 in the country?
I can't remember. Can you?
I mean, we used to have we'd have two of them.
But yeah, so now you got Grant there at number 8. Chase Brown from Illinois is number 1. But Anthony Grant, 8th, he's got 647 yards. I mean, I think that speaks volumes to how good of a back he is and how good going forward, if Nebraska ever gets an offensive line, how good he could be.
Yeah. No,
what do you like about him?
A couple of things. One, he's one of these guys, he doesn't do a lot of juke moves. Like you see a lot of guys hit the hole, do kind of a lot of stutter stepping, and then they go. When he's your classic plant your foot and go. When he gets hit, you don't see him try to put a move on a guy until he gets hit. Then he puts a spin move on a guy. Yeah, I'm kind of tired of seeing running backs try to put a move on people before they get hit. Now, he does a good job, open field kind of stuff, where he puts a juke move on guys, but I appreciate the fact that he gets hit, then you see a spin move, and he always gets a couple of extra yards. But he's a strong runner. He's not turnover prone. And in an offense where you got a guy who's shouldering the load in the run game, he's not fumble prone. Watch this. He's going to have like 3 fumbles against Purdue just because I said that. So, but
at 5 yards, I mean, you're talking 5 yards a carry. As long as he's 46.
And he can catch.
The
other thing I really like about him, he's not a bad blocker. And he's got a couple of, we actually cover a chip block by him in the doc's diagnosis. We're talking about the offensive tackles and how bad the tackles play is right now. But he's got a chip block where he lights up an edge rusher trying to help Corcoran out. And Grant just waylays the guy. I mean, he sends the guy spinning like a top back to the inside. He gets hit so hard. And Corcoran's so far out of position, he still can't make the block on the guy. But anyway, it's an outstanding if you want to see, I mean, this is like a Larry Centers level chip block, which if you remember Larry Centers and his chip blocks in the NFL from his fullback spot, those things were a thing of beauty. Just go YouTube, search that. But his chip blocks have been outstanding. His overall blocking has been outstanding. Again, when one of the offensive tackles isn't screwing it up. I know we had Ben Hart last week against Indiana that kind of botched one where Grant kind of got caught trying to figure he was trying to figure out who Ben Hart was trying to block. But his blocking is outstanding as well too. And that's one of those things where if you want to look at a guy who's going to have a chance at playing in the NFL, there's essentially 3 things running backs do. They run the ball, they catch the ball, they block. To be a great running back in the NFL, you only have to do 2 of those things really well. And the 2 you have to do are not running the football. If you're a running back and you can block really well and you can catch the pass, that'll get you into the NFL as a running back.
Well, it's interesting because we were talking about this on my radio show, is how I mean, if you see a guy go for 100 yards in the NFL now, you're like, holy shit, that's a hell of a day.
That's a bonus. That's icing on the cake.
It really is. I mean, it's just it is a passing game in the National Football League, and that's if you can get some run yards, good for you. But it's just if you see a running back go for 100 yards, and I mean, back when we were kids, it's the exact opposite, right? I mean,
that's what fullbacks were for.
Yeah,
fullbacks were. It was like Tom Rathman and Corey Schlesinger and Roger Craig when he played a little bit of fullback. It was your job was to catch passes and block from the fullback spot. Running backs carried the ball. Although I say that, I mean, you look at some of the great running backs over there. Walter Payton would just light dudes up with his blocking. But it's if you can block and you can catch the rock, man, you've got a job in the NFL as a running back, and Anthony Grant can do both. And the guy can carry the ball. And it's, probably okay. So here's the other thing. You asked what I like about Anthony Grant. Does Nebraska have a good offensive line?
Horrible. No.
You had the guys that led that were currently leading the nation here. Can you back up to that?
Yes. So I got Chase Brown, Illinois at 879.
Okay.
Guy from Pittsburgh, can't say his name, 830. Blake Corum at Michigan. He's a hell of a runner too.
He's very good.
735. Kalan Leborn at Marshall for 731. Brad Roberts at Air Force at 709. Raheem Sanders at Arkansas at 695. Deuce Vaughn at K-State. That dude, he's a lot like Darren Sproles.
Okay, I said that.
Yeah, and he torched Iowa State a little bit last week too. He's got 661, and Anthony Grant at 647.
You know why he torched Iowa State?
Why?
Because Matt Campbell's not sold on.
You're not sold on Matt Campbell.
That's not.
Well, after losing 3 in a row, I'm probably going to lose 4 in a row now by going to Texas next week. I think he's going to drop off a lot of people's lists.
I've said that multiple times. I've never been sold on Matt Campbell. All right, keep going. Or is that it?
And then Dwayne McBride at UAB at 641.
Okay. I mean, I can't speak much to Alabama, Birmingham. I can't talk much about. I mean, some of those other schools there. I mean, I couldn't tell you much about the kid from Marshall, but I mean, you go down some of those schools. You look at Illinois, you look at Michigan. You're talking about programs that, I mean, they've got a better offensive line than Nebraska.
Well, Illinois's got a better offensive line. Yeah. Michigan definitely has a better offensive line.
But that's the thing about Anthony Grant. If you want to know what I like about Grant, everything he's doing it with a subpar offensive line. You think those guys are giving him the holes that Corum's got at Michigan or Chase has at Illinois? It's like, hell no.
No, he's earning every yard he gets.
He does. Now, I mean, there's some plays where he gets some good blocking up front, but he's not getting the consistent productivity from his offensive line that most of the guys on that list are getting. He's just not. I mean, and that's one of those things where if you want to know what I really like about Anthony Grant as I sit here and think about it, is just how much of all of this is stuff that he's taking advantage. I'm not saying he's making all the holes himself, but the holes he's getting are smaller. He's not getting as good a down kind of second level blocking from that offensive line as the other guys on that list would be getting.
Now, the passing game gets a C+, a little bit better grade than the running game. We're going to get to Casey Thompson in a bit, but again, you've got a running back in the top 10 of the country. You got a receiver who's in the top 20, and he's 16.
And I like
Trey Palmer's. He's a playmaker.
And Vokalek, I think, is solid. He kind of has some of these weird, inexplicable drops.
It is kind of weird, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, he makes some huge plays. I mean, I like him. I actually do think he's an NFL guy. I think he's an outstanding blocker. And I think that's from a tight end standpoint. It's kind of like running back. It's one of those things that if you're a tight end and you can block, you're going to do well. You're going to go to the NFL.
And if you have hands, that's a bonus.
Yeah. So I like Vokalek a lot. I mean, the thing I still worry about him is the injury bug. He just seems a smidge fragile, but we'll see how that pans out rest of the season. But I mean, it's the passing game on the whole is just, for me, it was a consistency thing. And here's the other thing. offensive line plays into the passing game in the same sense that it plays into the run game. So when I'm grading passing game, when I'm grading running game, it's an O-line grade. I'm not just grading how did Anthony Grant do and what were Anthony Grant's stats. Anthony Grant can go for 200 yards, but if every hole he makes is completely by himself and Nebraska can't consistently control the line of scrimmage, like let's say Anthony Grant gets lucky, makes holes for himself, and has 5 30-yard touchdown runs during a game, I'm not giving the running game an A+ solely because of that if he gets stuffed for a 2-yard loss on his other 15 carries. I mean, it's just that. I mean, that's a net 120 yards.
Yeah.
You get 5 touchdowns and 120 yards rushing. But like I said, it's how that all plays out and where that's coming from. So everybody's getting graded on these. So when I look at
it reminds me like the old Iowa State days when Troy Davis played there. Remember Troy Davis?
Oh, God, 2,000 yards like 7 seasons in a row.
But he had like 0 offensive line.
Yeah.
I mean, that was all individual effort.
I do kind of wonder how he would have done in the NFL. I don't think anybody gave him a chance.
No, I think that's back when his size kind of mattered. I think they didn't take as hard a look at you.
But yeah, so I'm grading the offensive line in the passing game here as well too. And Nebraska's offensive line pass blocking leads to an inconsistency in the passing game also.
Well, and that leads us into, I want you to talk a little bit about Casey Thompson, because I'm starting to think he's one tough son of a bitch. I mean, that dude's on his back all the time. And I know he took the offensive line out for dinner last week. We talk about it on the diagnosis this week. Man, they ought to be taking him out for dinner. And
they really should be
because
at this point.
That dude...
Yeah, that was like a cry for help from Casey.
It really was.
Guys, help me out.
But I mean, if he had legitimate time,
and he does have some plays. I mean, I think they do some stuff where they kind of change the scheme up a little bit. But like I said, I mean, there's a play we do the doc's diagnosis on where they've been doing a fairly good job of putting some extra blockers in there, whether it's Vokalek at tight end, where they have Anthony Grant doing a chip block on the edge rushers to really help those guys out. But you are seeing more consistently, I mean, the last 2 weeks, you've seen both Indiana and Rutgers really go after Nebraska's offensive tackles. And it's very basic pass rushes. It's not like they're bringing weird blitzes to get to the quarterback. It's some basic end tackle end stunts. It's some basic speed rushes up the field. Nebraska's offensive tackles currently are having a lot of trouble hanging in there against very basic bread and butter pass rushes. And teams are getting to Casey Thompson with 4 guys, sometimes 5 guys. It doesn't take much to get to him. And that's what's really scary here. But the guy's tougher than hell. I mean, he's taking a lot of hits. I do worry about him from just a wear and tear standpoint. But this is one of those things where you look at like Adrian Martinez the previous 4 seasons. Adrian took a lot of hits. Now, part of the reason is because I think he was asked to really shoulder the load in the run game for Nebraska. And it doesn't matter whether those hits are coming on a pass play or a run game. Hits are hits, and it wears on you. And I always thought Adrian was actually a really tough kid. I always had a ton of respect for him. I appreciate what he's able to do and what he's doing down at Kansas State right now. But I mean, Casey Thompson's now going through that. This is one of those things where when you look at that, in the passing game, he's kind of taken a ton of hits. The one difference right now, and where I see maybe a little bit of a small bright spot, is the fact that Adrian kind of had to shoulder the load in the passing game. He had to shoulder the load in the running game. the saving grace is Casey. You don't have to rely on Casey Thompson for a run offense right now. And Nebraska, that's if they're going to have a chance against Illinois and Purdue and Minnesota and Iowa, so on and so forth, it's going to be because they've got a little bit of a run game here.
Hey, a quick reminder that if you need a lawyer, Connor Orr at Orr, Horgan, and Flente is the guy to call. He's a litigator. He's an NIL expert. He's a sports agent. He can do it all. In fact, the firm can do it all. You can reach him at Connor at ohflaw.com. That's Connor at ohflaw.com, or give him a call at 402-408-6488. Connor will be on the podcast again coming up probably in the next couple of weeks. We need to get down to cross-train and do another live.
Yeah, we do.
We need to do another live one.
Nothing ever wrong with the live
No,
one.
we like going live, and there's nothing wrong with drinking beer. Also, when you need some gear, you go to Husker Hounds. Scotty down at Husker Hounds, he was he was giving you shit yesterday about Florida State.
A little bit.
Yeah, he every once in a while, Scotty's one of these guys who
one sucked.
who works his tail off. He just looks flustered all the time because he's living in a retail shop. God bless him, he's an entrepreneur. But every once in a while, he comes out and just sends a little smart ass a text, and I get a chuckle out of it.
Killing me.
I know.
I'm looking for a college team. My Michigan State Spartans suck this year.
And they're stuck with a $100 million contract with that dude.
Yeah.
That was a dumb move. I get why you do it because but
and after last season, I get why, but man, things can look really shiny after 1 year and look pretty dull after another.
Yeah.
So that's going to be interesting to see how that happens. Truth be told, though, if you look at Mel Tucker, there's not a ton of really great track record in terms of consistency. You look at his time at Colorado. The one thing he's done is he beats Michigan. That game hasn't happened yet this year, but we'll see how that pans out. But yeah, no, it's been a rough year for the Spartan fans.
So up next for Nebraska is going to be Purdue. The Boilermakers have won 3 straight. They've lost 2 games on the year, losing to Penn State and to Syracuse, which if I'm
undefeated.
Yeah, Syracuse is unbeaten at 5-0. Penn State is also unbeaten. So and they lost to Penn State in the first game of the year. That was a 35-31 game. Lost to Syracuse 32-29. Now they've won 3 in a row. Narrow win over Florida Atlantic. Then they won at Minnesota and won at Maryland. Those are pretty good wins, right?
And that's the thing why I made the point that, hey, listen, if Nebraska's defense does what they did to Rutgers and Indiana, if they do that to Purdue, that's why I said all of a sudden that grade is no longer a C+. That's popping up to a B or a B+, depending on how Purdue passes the eyeball test when you're actually looking at them in real time. So
Purdue averaging 32.5 points per game, 119 yards on the ground game, 300 passing yards. So they're going to try to throw the football all over the place.
What's the rushing average?
119, which isn't bad.
That's not bad. That's kind of your classic pro style offense type numbers right there. Get your 100 yards rushing, pass the rest of the way, and there you go.
So the guy they're going to have to stop is Charlie Jones. Charlie Jones was a return specialist for Iowa last year. Was not moving up in the receiving area because you have Arlen Bruce, you've got Keegan Johnson, and he just wasn't moving up the depth chart. So
guess what he probably would be doing if he'd stayed at Iowa this year.
Yeah, Charlie Jones.
Let me put it. Never mind. He wouldn't have a quarterback throwing the ball at Iowa.
He wouldn't. Yeah, that's for sure. You got a quarterback that's pretty decent. You got 10
Okay, this is a stupid question, and I probably if I wasn't hanging out in Iowa City this weekend. What?
No, nothing. I'm impressed for you drinking the Apricot Gold.
It's like 1.7% alcohol by volume.
Yeah. Okay.
I realize looking at the label here, like we're literally drinking apricot juice.
Joe, you were hanging out in Iowa City this weekend.
No, I probably would have been paying more attention to Purdue in terms of how good they are. Well, I shouldn't say how good they are, who the actual players are. Who's their quarterback?
Aiden O'Connell.
Did he start last year? I think he did.
I should know that, but I don't know that. I'm going to show my error in my ignorance here.
I think the last time I actually watched Purdue play in person, the last 2 games I watched Purdue play, not in person, but watched them on TV, like actually sat and watched a game, was the Nebraska game last year and the Iowa game last year.
Yeah, it's not like it's not like you go, hey, we need to watch Purdue. That nobody ever says that. Unless you went to Purdue, you have no reason to say.
No, or if you're a Big Ten guy, there's plenty of opportunities.
Aiden O'Connell's a 6-year guy. A lot of 6-year guys.
Okay. That bodes poorly for Nebraska.
Applied data analytics is his major.
It's kind of the way the world's going right now.
Yeah.
No, you look at what Nebraska did last year on defense with a bunch of 6th-year seniors. That made a huge difference. Guys could actually execute Chenander's defense if they had that 6th year.
Yeah, he was second team All Big Ten last year as quarterback.
Okay.
So, shit, I should remember, but don't, because you know what?
I think you've purged that Iowa game from your memory, because I did watch that. That was my son's recruiting trip to Grandview. We were sitting at the El Bait Shop watching the Iowa-Purdue game.
El Bait Shop, 260 beers on tap.
They were all delicious. Food was solid, too.
Yeah.
We didn't make it over to, was it the
Miller High Life Lounge?
Yeah, we did not, which in hindsight, I should have gone over there and experienced the shag carpet.
Everybody goes, how do you get away with calling it the Miller High Life Lounge? Isn't that some kind of... They sell more at Miller High Life than any other bar in the country. So Miller is just fine with them calling it the Miller High Life Lounge.
There has not been a cease and desist order for that one.
They're like, oh, you sell how much Miller High Life? You can call that lounge whatever you want.
That's awesome. If I went to the Miller High Life Lounge, I probably would order a couple of Miller High Lifes.
So do you think the 11 points, it started at like 13 or 14, it's dropped down to 11. Do you think that's fair? I don't think it's disrespectful to Nebraska. When I saw, and this leads us back to the original comment, if you think you're getting disrespected by being a double-digit underdog, you got to earn. You got to earn respect.
To the second team All Big Ten quarterback,
yeah,
no, and to a defense that has actually done some damage over the last few years. So, yeah, I kind of go back and forth on Jeff Brom. Is it Brom or Brome?
It's Brome.
Brome. I go back and forth over Brome as a head coach. Every time like right now, I'm kind of high on him, and every time I start thinking, God, this guy's a pretty damn good coach. They go and do something that lets me down, but. No, I do not think it's disrespectful, because again, I'm the guy who gave Nebraska's defense a C+.
If Nebraska has some hope here, it's not like Purdue's defense is a world beater here. Okay, they're giving up, 327 a game.
That's total. In this day and age, that's not horrible. What's the breakdown on?
96 rushing, 230 passing.
Okay, so I know it's close, but technically you're holding opponents to less than 100 yards rushing per game.
They've only given up 3 rushing TDs all year.
Yeah, that's pretty good. So, once when Nebraska got past Oklahoma, which, God, I'd love to play Oklahoma again,
I think everybody's lining up to play Oklahoma right now.
Holy shit. That's a... I don't know. I'll be interested to see how that all pans out. But it's
and I get that Lincoln Riley took like everybody, right?
God, we were talking about this in the whole text thread with Scott. But yeah, he took everybody in the recruiting class that he's got coming in is outstanding. So I think they'll do okay, because I think they lost a ton. At the same time, you got a little bit of a different system. Guys are going to have to get used to that. You got guys who probably are sitting there in their head trying to think like the Lincoln Riley system when they're trying to learn the Brett Venables system. It's a change, and sometimes you can't rely on athletic ability forever. And I think Oklahoma did that for the first few games, and now they've got to actually strap it up and play football cohesively as a team, and that's not always easy to do, especially when you've got a first-year head coach.
I do think this will be, and going back to the Purdue game, you're right when it comes to the grades to the defense.
This is the yardstick.
This is the yardstick. This is finally a team you can measure up against and go, okay, where do you sit?
So here's the thing. I'll tell you what I think. How do you think Nebraska does?
I think it's a good question. I'm almost borderline tempted to say they win, but I'm not. I can't trust them.
I think most fans have kind of looked at the Oklahoma game and said, okay, we're throwing that out.
Yeah.
Week after Scott got fired, we're dumping that. Indiana, Rutgers, that's where Nebraska's at right now. I think we get kind of brought back down to earth a little bit by Purdue.
Double-digit loss? I mean, they're sitting at an 11-point favorite.
Yeah. I'm going to say yeah.
Wow.
I just it's one of those things. I actually think this might be the best defense Nebraska plays.
No.
I mean, it has played up to this point.
Okay, because I was going to say, you got Illinois coming up. You got Minnesota coming up.
No,
those are good defense.
Not the best defense they play.
Okay.
I think top to bottom, now that we've had a chance to see teams, this might be the best overall team that Nebraska has played up to this point in the season, and I think they're a better team than Oklahoma. I think shit got out of hand in the Oklahoma game, and I am more than willing to throw that one out. I don't have a problem dumping that one and saying, okay, here's the one-off. You just fired Scott. Mickey took over. You got all these emotions. You've got this emotional high coming into the game. And then Oklahoma does one thing right and everything sort of tanks. Dylan Gabriel goes on whatever that was, that 60-yard touchdown run where there were guys not even trying to tackle him. So I'm perfectly willing. Let's throw out the Oklahoma game.
Okay.
And I thought Oklahoma, in terms of just pure athleticism, might be one of the most athletic teams Nebraska plays all year. Oklahoma doesn't have their shit together right now in any way, shape, or form. So that's the one-off. You look at all the other teams Nebraska's played at this point, I think Purdue's the best team. I think they're playing the best team football right now. You look at their two losses. It's close losses. I mean, we're talking field goals win those games for Purdue.
Penn State's a pretty good football team, top 10.
Well, I'm sorry, that was a 4-point loss, correct? That was 31-35 loss.
And same with Syracuse.
And Syracuse, I thought, was a 2-point.
Yeah, so it was 35-31.
Was Syracuse?
It was Penn State, and Syracuse was 32-29. There's your field.
Okay, so a 3-point loss. So that's two losses, 8 points combined to two undefeated teams. Those are pretty good teams. And you lost to them by less than a touchdown each.
And then you beat Minnesota at Minnesota.
Yeah, don't tell me Purdue's not a solid football team. I'm not saying they're great, but I agree with you. I think Purdue wins the Big Ten West right now.
Really?
I'm just saying if you look at the way...
they've got the tiebreaker over Minnesota.
Yeah. I mean, look, you think Wisconsin's going to rebound and have an awesome season?
It'd be interesting. They kind of changed up their offense a little bit. They got a hell of a running back. It'd be interesting to see what happens with Wisconsin if Jim Leonard can turn that around.
And I love Leonard.
I mean, listen.
I think Jim Leonard's a hell of a
Mickey Joseph can turn around Nebraska, Jim Leonard can turn around Wisconsin.
So you're saying Mickey's turned Nebraska around?
No, but he's won 2 games.
I think Mickey's polishing shit right now. And that's not easy to do.
Wow.
I'm just saying they're not a very good football team. I'm going to take some serious...
Look at me being the positive one here.
I'm going to take some serious flack for this. I'm just... And they could legitimately... I mean, the ball bounces right. They could go 6-6, 5-7. And I think that would be... If Nebraska goes 5-7, that's a massive win in my book. You've taken some incredibly difficult circumstances and won.
I think a lot of people are thinking 7 wins right now. Now, I think that's hard to get to.
I think 7's going to be kind of tough.
6 would be reason to dance in the street. Not going to give Mickey the job, though. No.
But that's the thing that's interesting is what if he goes 6-6 and goes to a bowl game? Nebraska historically, I mean, you look at Pelini, you look at Callahan, you look at Pelini, you look at even fucking Mike Riley. God, he took a was it a 5-7 team to a bowl game and knocked off UCLA in California to finish 6-7. And we're like, oh my God, Mike Riley's actually a really good coach. Look what we did in this bowl game. So Nebraska does okay in bowl games. What if they go 6-6, go to a bowl game and win it and finish 7-6?
No.
Because if Scott had done that, we'd all be sitting here going, okay, we did this revamp with the coaching staff in the offseason, Scott, and you went 7-6. That was now, I didn't say this, but a lot of people said 6-6 or 7-5, Scott keeps his job.
I don't think that would happen.
I'm saying that's what a lot of people said going into the season. Again, I'm the guy who, when Trev Alberts said Nebraska, like when Trev Alberts was asked at Big Ten Media Days, and Trev was asked, hey, what's the number? What does Scott have to do to keep his job? And Trev's response was, this isn't tied to a number. And 90% of Nebraska fans were sitting there going, oh, we could go 6-6 or maybe even 5-7, and Scott may not lose his job. And I'm the guy sitting there going, Scott could go 6-6 or 7-5 and still lose his job.
And I think that would have been more likely.
Yeah, and that's what did fucking happen. I mean, it looked like shit and that happened.
He was done after the Northwestern game.
Yes, I totally believe that.
Yes, he was done 100%. After the
100%.
Northwestern game. Didn't matter.
I mean, beating North Dakota that's a moot point.
Yeah.
It was an FCS school.
It didn't matter at all.
Georgia Southern was okay, we got to pull the trigger now. What happened against Oklahoma was going to happen against Oklahoma no matter what.
Yeah, I agree with you with that.
I think that happens whether they fired Scott that previous week or not. So,
well, Matt Rule got fired by the Carolina Panthers today.
There's a guy who just went to the top of everybody's not Trev's list, but everybody else's discussion.
I mean, Matt Rule will be coaching college football next year.
He's one. So
I mean, he can be at Georgia Tech.
Yeah, I thought he was great at Baylor. He was great at Temple. Yeah.
Some people like to see if they can perform at the highest level and go to the National Football League.
I always wonder about the guys who do very well as a college coach and think they're going to take it to that next level. I mean, I can think of one guy off the top of my head who it worked for, and that was Pete Carroll. And I say that within the last 20 years.
And by the way, Pete Carroll was kind of a failure of an NFL coach before he took the USC job.
I mean, I'll never call a guy a failure. He was very mediocre.
Yeah. Got the USC job, became a star, and did just fine at the Seahawks.
There's circumstances matter a lot at whether it's college or NFL. I mean, look at Bill Belichick. I mean, because it's even one of those things with the Patriots where you can say it's like, okay, well, without Tom Brady, how good is he? Well,
yeah.
God, he did pretty damn well with Jimmy Garoppolo, too, and Brady tore his ACL, and Garoppolo started that season, sent Garoppolo to the Pro Bowl. So it's circumstances matter a lot in the NFL, but I don't think Matt Rule's an NFL coach. Spurrier tried it. Nick Saban tried it and fell flat on his face.
Do you think Matt Rule is a candidate for the Nebraska job?
I think it's hard to discount him as a potential.
Do you think Husker fans would like Matt Rule as a head coach? If he does at Nebraska what he did at Baylor, I think they fucking love his ass. Do you think they'd like Bill O'Brien as a coach?
So so here's the thing. Let's talk about Bill O'Brien for a second. So I was always kind of a Bill O'Brien fan because I looked at what he did at Penn State, and that was just a horrific situation to come into and try and do anything.
Yeah.
Okay, I used the phrase polishing shit a little bit ago in reference to Nebraska, and I think that's what Mickey's trying to do. That was really polishing shit at Penn State is what Bill O'Brien did.
It's what Matt Rule did at Baylor.
I cannot think. Well, actually, you know what? That's a great point.
Yeah.
I mean, take any coach who tried to come into SMU after the death penalty. Look at the stuff at Baylor, which honestly, I would say what happened at Penn State and what happened at Baylor, honestly, in terms of the downfalls of those programs was far worse than at SMU, everything that happened that got SMU the death penalty is 100% fucking, sorry, Dave, legal now in college football.
It's crazy, isn't it?
It's insane.
Absolutely crazy.
I'm watching Dr. Pepper commercials with the current quarterback from Alabama. Like, for some reason, it took me, I had to watch that commercial like 3 times before it finally clicked. I felt like, wait a sec, that's Bryce Young.
Yeah.
That's actually Alabama's current quarterback.
Yes,
It was
doing a Dr. Pepper commercial for the Heisman, for Fansville.
It was the third time I watched it when all of a sudden I was like, holy shit, how much do you think he's getting paid for that? That commercial alone.
Oh,
or just by Dr. Pepper in general.
I would say over $100,000.
That's it?
Well, I'm just taking a stab at it. I don't know, 100, 200, 250, $500,000. I don't know. if you're going to sit there and run it all season long,
yeah,
there's a lot of money wrapped up in it.
Hopefully they negotiated a potential, a percentage of airtime or whatever. But anyway, those were horrific situations to take over at Baylor and Penn State. Just mind-blowingly so. Those guys did, outstanding jobs. I think you like Matt Rule far more than you like Bill O'Brien.
I would agree with you on that.
And part of the reason I say that is that, I'm not as much of an NFL guy as a lot of people are. I like my Giants. I like my experience with it. I don't follow NFL football as much as a lot of people do. And I'm saying just purely from a fan standpoint. The people who are NFL fans, especially AFC fans, Houston Texans fans, oh my God, they did. People on a personal level did not like Bill O'Brien. Now, it worked at Penn State. Actually, he was okay at Houston for a while. Most people said he coached angry. He was one of these rip you a new one, old school guys who, almost Pelini-esque. I got a buddy who's a big AFC NFL fan. He's a Chiefs guy, follows the AFC. That's his bag. And he said, he goes, if you followed the Houston Texans and watched them and really paid attention to Bill O'Brien, they said he's like the sideline demeanor of Pelini spitting in Taylor Martinez's face during the Texas A&M game. They said Bill O'Brien's that, but worse.
Interesting. That's crazy.
Now, like I said, I haven't followed the guy that much. I know what he did at Penn State. And it was nothing short of a damn miracle that he had them playing as well as they did. And he had them playing Penn State's brand of football, which at the time was good rushing game, passing game to the tight ends, and really solid defense. So he kind of stuck to the culture of Penn State, had them playing good, solid football within a season. I remember at the time thinking, like, how the hell is this happening? This should have been like an SMU-like effect where these guys were just, Penn State should have been just decimated as a program for years, and they weren't. And it was because of Bill O'Brien. So I think the guy's got some ability to coach, but I think just as a person, it's not something Nebraskans are going to want in Lincoln.
And the big groundswell now is that with every game that he wins, people are getting behind Mickey Joseph, and I get it. I still think Trev Alberts.
We've got two wins,
Yep.
and it was over arguably the two worst Big Ten teams on the schedule.
I still think Trev Alberts has the ability, and I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, to pull off like a Lincoln Riley type of surprise. Like, go, wow, I didn't see that happening.
Actually, I'm convinced because we got a pool at work where we've got like, okay, a list of, it's like 14 coaches, 12 coaches, something like that. And it's 5 of us all in this little pool, and everybody gets 3 coaches.
So who do you have? Who are your coaches?
I think I got Calhoun at Air Force.
Okay. His name came up today with somebody I know who knows Trev well, who said that Trev was high on Troy Calhoun 8-9 years ago.
And I'd heard that rumor a couple times before. I don't know how much truth there is to it. I think I got Dornan from NC State as well.
Really?
Is who is in like my picks in the pool. And there's a third one. I don't even remember who, but
I mean, it'd be interesting. I still think like a Mike Gundy out of nowhere. Mike Gundy.
Mike's one of those guys. So Oklahoma State's one of those programs where I look at the money they have. There's a lot of money there.
Yeah, T-Boone's dead, but he's dead.
I know, but God, they had so much money over the years.
But let me tell you why I think this. The Big 12's changing. Bedlam's goes away. The Big 12
I mean, Bedlam's going the route of where the Oklahoma-Nebraska game went. Although Bedlam, to Oklahoma people, OU and OSU people, Bedlam was a bigger deal than the Nebraska-Oklahoma.
So Bedlam goes away. You're bringing in some teams that maybe the conference isn't as strong as it once was. And you go, now maybe the time to make a jump. You might have a better shot at winning a national title in Lincoln than Oklahoma State. I don't know. For some reason,
my thing is with Gundy is I look at Gundy, and he, in my opinion, is who he actually is. Who Iowa State fans and Matt Campbell apologists think Matt Campbell is. He actually is going to go out there and he's going to get you. Matt Campbell is going to get you. Has he had a 9-win season?
With a bowl win, I believe so. I'll have to go look, but I think he had one with a bowl win.
Pull this up for us while I'm talking here. So Matt Campbell's one of these guys. He's going to get you 7-8 wins. He's going to get you that one or maybe even 2, like, holy shit, upsets in a season. But then he's going to lose a couple of those. Like, how the hell did we just beat Texas? How did we lose to these guys? We just beat a good Oklahoma team. How did we lose to these guys? That's Matt Campbell, and it's just.
I was wrong. He had 9-3 in 2020.
Okay. Which one of those was over Drake, if I'm not mistaken?
And then they won the Fiesta Bowl that year too.
Was that against Oregon? I think it was.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I mean, I'm not saying Matt Campbell's not a good coach, but he's one of those guys that I think people think of him in a slightly higher light than he's actually achieved.
Because he's done it at Iowa State. I mean, he had a 9-win season at Iowa State.
I get it. I look at Gundy and I think he's slightly better than that because Gundy's the guy who does have some 9, 10, 11 win seasons. You've got a guy who truly has competed for some conference championships. But at the same time, too, I look at Gundy and go like, okay, here's a guy who recruits Oklahoma and Texas. And he just, against some horrible Texas schools, and I'm including University of Texas in this mix, against some Texas schools in Texas that have not performed as well as they should have, he still hasn't gotten Oklahoma State to that next level. He's at that 9-10 win level. You would think at some point when you look at the NFL guys that he's churned out, some of the quarterbacks he's churned out, the old linemen he's churned out, at some point, how has he not gotten them to that next jump up? And that's the thing I look at, where they've got great facilities. You've got the location's fine. It's not like anybody sits around and goes like, God, Stillwater. I mean, it's the metropolis. No, but you got Oklahoma City right there. And actually, if you like your southern Midwestern college towns, I always really loved the road trip to Okie State. That was a great road trip. We always enjoyed it. I liked the school, the campus, the facilities were awesome. The fans there were solid. But I always kind of wondered why. I mean, Pat Jones would get Hartley Dykes. He would get Thurman Thomas. He would get Mike Gundy.
Yeah. Barry Sanders. I mean, God, he had some great players over the years there.
Who's the great defensive end for the Redskins? Dexter Manley. Manley was an Okie State, was an Oklahoma State Cowboy. I mean, he had some outstanding players that came through there over the years. He would get these NFL guys. Nobody has ever been able to get him over that next level, including Mike Gundy. And that's kind of why I don't know. He's like a slightly better version of Matt Campbell, in my opinion.
A slightly better version than Matt
Campbell.
I think at the end of the day,
and honestly, I mean, if you want to make the argument, you could probably make the argument Matt Campbell's better because he's had far less to work with than Gundy has. Gundy can go down into Texas and grab all those kids who don't go to UT and OU and say, come here and let's go beat OU and UT, and he does it on occasion.
I look at it this way.
So that's why I went on a rant.
No, and that's
why
fine.
I don't think it's going to be Mike Gundy.
Trev won the press conference brilliantly, right? Saying, hey, if you hear I talk to somebody, I'm going to talk to a lot of people. Truth is, we haven't heard really anything.
Yeah. Well, and I truly think it's one of these, we're all going to be wrong.
Absolutely. I don't disagree with you.
And I shouldn't say we're all going to be wrong. It would not surprise me if it's one of these, I'm going to call it understated guys, like a Calhoun. I mean, I still got these thoughts that I feel like I'm one of the few guys who's thrown Monken out there.
Yeah. Well, time will tell. Mickey can still win this thing. I think it's going to be hard. I just think it's going to be hard.
But, I mean, that's why I say with Mickey, it gets hard. If he goes 6-6, which that's 3 more wins. They get 3 more wins, they're 6-6.
He definitely has the fan support right now.
Yeah.
And he'll keep that for a while because he
deserved.
Absolutely.
I do think he's coaching he's coaching his ass off right now and doing an outstanding job.
But he's doing it in a rah-rah way just to make sure everybody's motivated and make sure they feel loved, right? I mean, it's...
But I mean, some of the stuff that I'm seeing, I think it goes beyond just motivation.
Okay.
I do think the defense is doing some very good things. Whatever Bill Bush or Mickey and Bill Bush are doing on that defense, they're doing some good things. I mean, I'm not saying it's A+ material. I'm not saying it's B material. But they're doing some good things on that defense that are fairly impressive. He's done some good things otherwise during the course of these last 2 games. You've got 2 games they've won that I think Scott Frost loses. I truly think they lose to Indiana.
Wow.
Frost is the head coach.
You're not the first person to say that.
They definitely lose to Rutgers. I mean, you're going to come from 2 scores down to win in the second half. When has Nebraska done that?
That's fair.
Under Scott. They just don't. On the road, in a tough situation, you're going to come from 2 scores down, and oh, by the way, your defense is going to have to make a play to do it.
That's a fair point.
So there's good things they're doing. I'm just saying, on the whole, in terms of the quality of players, in terms of some key position groups that you need to have playing good football, they just don't have all the tools in the toolbox. They don't have an offensive line in the toolbox right now. Like, I mean, there's part of me, I made some comment to you, and I can't remember if it was Saturday when we recorded the doc's diagnosis or if it was last week. It was off camera and off microphone. Part of me actually almost kind of wonders, as bad as what I'm seeing out of certain players on that O-line, if maybe Donovan Raiola might be doing an amazing job. It's just the guys he's got are truly that.
Yeah, I think you
bad.
actually said that on Saturday's recording the diagnosis.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if, like, part of me is almost sitting here going like, shit, maybe he's literally like kicking ass. He just has nothing to work with.
Would you? I think this happened after we recorded last week, but Matt Davison no longer on the radio. He's going to go run. His new NIL is going to absorb ABM. This is a weird stuff going around.
Yeah, but I mean, if you look at a lot of the background of this,
listen,
does
I'm
this
surprised
surprise you?
It surprises me that Trev Albert still wants Matt Davison to be part of this.
I don't know if Trev has much of an official say over this once it gets to the NIL side.
Oh, I think you can influence who your players go do NIL deals with.
No, I get that, but here's the thing. I mean, I've always gotten along great with Jared. He was good with us bringing Luke and Nick up. Jared came on the show, chatted with us, was very frank about how the NIL stuff's working, and what that system is. And that was an amazing podcast.
It was.
People, again, it's some of our best podcasts. I also think are some of the least listened to ones. People ought to go back and listen to that podcast.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: Jared was a Scott Frost guy, hometown buddy of Scott. He was Scott's basic. I think they had him titled as chief of staff at UCF. Followed Scott back up to Lincoln. Was his chief of staff, basically like essentially an executive administrative assistant. Sort of basically an associate AD for football to work directly with the head coach. And that was a position that Trev came in and was just like, yeah, this position's no longer going to exist. Jared moves on, gets ABM up and running. And I look at the same kind of thing with Davison. I have a hard time believing, again, I could be totally wrong when I say this. I have a hard time believing that Matt Davison and Trev are on great terms. Because I think Trev came into that athletic department, took a look around, and was just like, I don't know what 9/10 of these people are doing here.
And are you a bad influence on your head coach?
Exactly, and started cleaning house. And I think when I look at Davison, why I get the whole you're no longer an assistant AD or whatever that actual position was that Davison held. I'm not talking about the broadcast stuff, but he held, I think, what essentially amounted to like an assistant AD's position.
In charge of football. Like.
Yeah. It was sort of the Steve Peterson under Bill Byrne position in the early mid-90s.
Because he cut the deal with Moose because he's the one who talked Matt into
exactly. He was one of the key players in that. And I totally get that. But that's one of those things where this wasn't just he got removed from that. He got removed from the broadcast thing.
Well, I think he stepped down. I think it was like, I'm going to go. I don't think he was removed.
But a week prior, he was doing it. A week later, he's not.
Because he's going to go work for the NIL thing.
Why would you leave an incredibly visible public position when your job is to fucking raise money from the public?
There might be a conflict of interest there.
But when has that ever stopped anything within the state of Nebraska?
You might be right. You might be onto something. I'm not going to argue the point that you may be right on that.
Yeah, I'm just saying that's never stopped anything before.
Matter of fact, it would probably be good to have that person be on the radio.
Yeah, I'm sitting here going like, okay, if you really want this to be good, keep them there. Now, I do understand if you're going to go do the NIL thing, and there might be a hardcore, because that broadcast position is as, correct me if I'm wrong, you might know this better than me. Matt and Greg Sharp would essentially be they're subcontracted employees to the university.
I believe
is that how that's
like John Walters at Iowa State is an actual employee of the university. So I don't know.
I don't know the contract structure for
like
the Husker broadcast network.
I don't know what that is either.
Yeah, if those guys are actual.
So I don't know if Greg is an employee of Learfield or if he's like a partial employee of Learfield but still does some work for Nebraska.
Or Learfield. If you're with Learfield, is that a sub? I mean, how do those contracts work out? That I don't know. So my question would be, are they truly, is there actually a contractual conflict of interest from a university employee standpoint, and you're going and working for NIL and you've got to maintain that separation for NC2A rules purposes? That's where I'm going.
Yeah,
with
I don't have an answer to that.
Because I do think, and I do know to some degree, there's got to be a break there. There's got to be a pretty hard break for NC2A rule purposes, that if you're doing the NIL thing, you can't be part of the university. And I think if you're doing the broadcast, my assumption would be maybe Trev stepped in and said, listen, it's too close.
Yeah, and that's a fair point, right? Because, and I do believe Matt was an employee of the university, not of Learfield. So that would make perfect sense to why you say, hey, if you're going to run NIL, you cannot.
Which he couldn't. I mean, I could see it as you can't do the assistant AD thing. That I get. I'm just saying from the broadcast thing, and as a Learfield guy, is that a subcontracted position that's too close to being a true employee of the
I would say it's pretty. It's blurred lines.
It's close enough.
Absolutely, it's blurred lines.
Then I get it.
Yeah.
Then I guess it's one of those. Then I say, okay, I get it, and it's not just Trev cleaning house kind of deal where, hey, you're too much of a Scott Frost guy. We need to clean house of the Scott Frost guys. That's kind of where I guess I was going with this, is where I wondered if that's what the deal was.
So you may have noticed that we were a day late recording this week. I think we're going to be doing the same thing next week, right? Are we going to be a couple days late next week or not?
We're either going to, we're going to be more than a few. So
okay, all right. We'll talk off the air.
We'll talk. Well, it's, I'm going to go watch the Clemson Florida State game.
Yeah. So I just didn't know when you got back.
I might be gone for a couple of days.
Okay. So
we might have to do I might have to be sitting on a beach.
Well,
drinking a Florida craft beer.
So there'll probably be no diagnosis next week, and I've already told Steve Swanstrom at Centris that. However, if you could bring your laptop, maybe we could do a Skype podcast.
Give that a try.
Yeah, bring your laptop. We could do a Skype or a Google Meet type thing, and we could.
I got to figure my laptop out.
It's a piece of cake. It's not that hard.
Technology eludes me.
It's really not that hard.
I still use an abacus.
It's not that hard. Dr. Rob, for a guy that didn't like apricot beer, he downed 4 of them tonight. Attaboy. Attaboy.
Again, it's apricot. Literally, this shit is apricot.
Download the Betfred Sports app when you want to make your sports wagers online. Betfred Sports available in the Apple and Google Play stores. And when you enter the promo code DocTalk in Arizona, Colorado, and Iowa.
On the can here, by the way.
Yeah.
They fermented it for 3 hours.
Nice.
That means there's no alcohol in it.
$20 free bet from Betfred Sports in Arizona, Colorado, and Iowa when you download and set up a brand new account and enter the promo code DocTalk. I want to thank Husker Max for distributing this podcast. Always good working with David Max and Joe Hudson over there. Good guys. Scotty Strunk over there at Husker Hounds. Visit one of his 2 locations in the Omaha area. Go online to huskerhounds.com. And Connor Orr with Orr, Horgan, and Fuente. He's our in-house counsel. He's our representative. When we need legal advice, we go to Connor. When you need legal advice, you go to Connor Orr as well at ohlflaw.com. For Dr. Rob Zadisk, I'm Travis Justice. We will talk to you next week on the Doc Talk podcast presented by Betfred Sports.